Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I'd like to thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So please pay attention. We won't have any answering of phones or texting or separate conversations. It makes it difficult for me to concentrate on the subject matter. And if Krishna sees that you want to hear something, then maybe even I can get the help, because I was told I need all the help I can get. Chapter 6, Text 2. You found it? Yam Sanyasam Iti Prahur Yogam Tam Vidi Pandava Na Hi Asanyasta Sankalpo Yogi Bhavati Kaschana Yam Sanyasam Iti Prahur Yogam Tam Vidi Pandava Nahi Asanyasta Sankalpo Yogi Bhavati Kaschana Yam what? Sanyasam renunciation. Iti thus. Prahu they say. Yogam linking with the Supreme. Tam that. Vidi you must know. Pandava O son of Pandu. Na never. He certainly. Asanyasta without giving up. Sankalpa desire for self-satisfaction. Yogi a mystic transcendentalist. Bhavati becomes. Kaschana anyone. Translation. What is called renunciation, you should know to be the same as yoga, or linking oneself with the Supreme. O son of Pandu, for one can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification. So repeat it. What is called renunciation? You should know to be the same as yoga, or linking oneself with the Supreme. O son of Pandu, for one can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Had to hold this steady, the wind keeps blowing the page over. Real sannyas yoga, or bhakti, means that one should know his constitutional position as the living entity and act accordingly. The living entity has no separate, independent identity. He is a marginal energy of the Supreme. When he is entrapped by the material energy, he is conditioned. And when he is Krishna conscious, or aware of the spiritual energy, then he is in his real, natural state of life. Therefore, when one is in complete knowledge, one ceases all material sense gratification, or renounces all kinds of sense gratificatory activities. What happens when you're in complete knowledge?
cease all material sense gratification.
That's right, we just read it. This is practiced by the yogis who restrain the senses from material attachment. But a person in Krishna consciousness has no opportunity to engage his senses in anything which is not for the purpose of Krishna. Therefore, a Krishna conscious person is simultaneously a sannyasi and a yogi. The purpose of knowledge and of restraining the senses, as prescribed in the jnana and yoga processes, is automatically served in Krishna consciousness. If one is unable to give up the activities of his selfish nature, then jnana and yoga are of no avail. The real aim is for the living entity to give up all selfish satisfaction and be prepared to satisfy the self. Satisfy the Supreme. A Krishna conscious person has no desire for any kind of self-enjoyment. He is always engaged for the enjoyment of the Supreme. For one who has no information of the Supreme must therefore be engaged in self-satisfaction, because no one can stand on the platform of inactivity. All purposes are perfectly served by the practice of Krishna consciousness. I'll read the verse again. What is called renunciation you should know to be the same as yoga, or linking oneself with the Supreme, O son of Pandu. For one can never become a yogi unless he renounces the desire for sense gratification. We're talking about sense gratification and renouncing the desire for sense gratification. There's many verses in the Bhagavad-Gita that deal with this, and we're going to read them all. Not right now, that's your homework assignment, to study these. We won't read them all now. But this is gone into in great detail. You know, Krishna is describing here the difference. Basically, our activities come down to two: Krishna-centered or self-centered. I'm serving myself or I'm serving Krishna. And when we see the benefits of serving Krishna, does it take knowledge or bhakti? Or both? Both, you're right, it takes both. But we study the knowledge to gain bhakti. Not that we do the bhakti just to get knowledge. That, please Krishna, I'm worshiping you so you can make me look intelligent. We do it for that purpose. So, we look at the activities of people in this world. We think of the choices here. That generally, if we go in the temple, there's 3 doors there, right? Now, which one of those is the proper door to go and worship at? Which one of those will benefit you? All of them. You got it. You can't make a mistake, right? All of them. Now, when it talks about the materialistic activities, there are 3 gates leading to hell: lust, anger, and greed. Which one of those is good? None of them. So, since it's so clear that in one side we get Krishna consciousness for fun and for free, they put in advertisements the pictures of the beautiful women. Do those come cheap? No. You got to have a lot of money to get someone like that interested. So we have the choice of having to come up with a lot of money to suffer materially, or for fun and free we can become Krishna conscious. And if we're confused about this, this must mean we're insane, right? If I stick a gun at your head and say, do you want me to kill you or give you a kilo of gold? And you say, well, do I have some time to think about it? But it's like that, isn't it? This is what the Sankhya means. We add up the cost to value ratio, right? Do you want to buy a 10 rupee note for 1 crore of rupees? Do you? No? Do you want to buy 1 crore of rupees for 200 rupees? Yes. So we have to see that the value exceeds the cost. That is the point here. is to realize that everything we do in Krishna consciousness will be good. And when is the lust, anger, and greed helpful? It isn't, is it? But when we just have to have it, then we're stuck in that condition. That's why we see we need to set a goal for ourselves spiritually and work to achieve that goal and mold our life in such a way that we are always engaged in Krishna consciousness. We have a process to do. There's 9 processes. I'm going to name some different things, and you tell me which ones of these are process of devotion and which are not. Shravanam. Yes? Yes. Prajalpanam. No. Kirtanam. Yes. Nindanam. No. Okay. Smaranam. Yes. Padasevanam. Yes. Archanam. Yes. Vandanam. Yes. Sakyam. Yes. Kama. No? Okay. And Atmanivedanam. Okay, good. We have to be able to identify. So we engage ourselves in these ways. But the trouble is that, like Krishna says in the 2nd chapter, in the 44th verse, this is why that the intelligence of those who are irresolute is many. Is the intelligence of the mind. Intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. And he also says that those whose minds are too much attached to material opulence and sense gratification, the resolute determination for devotional service does not take place. We become addicted to the sinful activities. People know, like some people smoke here, and there's a big sign that they're showing the pictures of what happens to your lungs and what happens when you chew the tobacco. It makes me grateful that I don't do that, right? But you'd think any person would have to be crazy to do that. I asked the one person, you go out to smoke so often, do you enjoy it? He says, no. I said, then why do you do it? But people do things that they don't enjoy because they are conditioned to it. Doesn't matter if it makes me happy, I always do that. I slap myself in the face, I'm conditioned to it, so you keep doing it, right? This is what Prabhupada was saying here in this, is that we have to become unconditioned. We should know our constitutional position and act accordingly. When we start acting accordingly, then we become unconditioned. But when we act in a conditioned state, we're in trouble. So, there was a picture I found in here that the trouble we have is that, in other philosophies, they don't quite often talk in religions about how to engage the mind. Like they say, well, okay, just accept Christ. Okay, but what do I do from there? And what's the difference between matter and spirit? And who's the controller of both? They have some inconsistent ideas. In some other religions, they bury the body because the body is supposed to get resurrected. So now we become confused about what's matter and what's spirit. Like if someone's talking to me and then I take off my kurta and put it over there and they're talking to the kurta, you might get confused about, well, who's the person, the kurta or him, right? So if they're thinking that body's going to get resurrected, then that also means you better die young or you'll be old eternally. And they have an inconsistent idea, and they don't teach us that. Which do we do? Attached to Krishna or detached from matter? Which one? You do one, it leads you to the other, but you more or less have to do both. But one will help you achieve the other. And if you only do one, it will be difficult to get both. Because the trouble is, if you don't know where you're going, it's going to be difficult to get there. So they don't teach this in the other religions, understanding what is matter, what is spirit, who is the controller of both, what's the hierarchy, what's more subtle and what's more gross. What we have is that the supreme God is Krishna. Then the living entity is qualitatively the same, but quantitatively different. Now, What's supposed to happen is, Prabhupada says that the intelligence is the next door neighbor to the soul. Now what you're supposed to do is the soul gives instructions to the intelligence, and the intelligence controls the mind, and the mind controls the senses to keep them away from matter. Quite often people do it the other way around. The senses are attracted by the matter, so the lower controls the higher instead of the higher controlling the lower. So the sense objects attract the senses. The senses attract the mind. And then the mind tells the intelligence to go make the ways and means for me to get this sense gratification. But we should not let the senses direct the mind and the mind direct the intelligence. The intelligence should be directing the mind, and the mind should direct the senses. There is a picture here that I found. I don't know if you've seen this, where the soul is back here, and the intelligence is driving, and the reins are the mind, and the horses are the senses. You see that picture in there? You found that one? And if the senses are running amok, it reminds me of that verse 6:30 in Bhagavad-Gita, where Krishna says, if the mind is unbridled, just like here, bridled means you have control of it, is bridled, then the business of self-realization is difficult. But for one whose mind is controlled and who advances with appropriate means, this person is assured of success. And Krishna says, that is my opinion. His opinion is pretty valuable, right? So we notice the difference here, that if we're unbridled, we're going to be all over the place. You're going to get dragged, right? We get dragged, right? If you don't have control of it, and it has control of you, the mind drags and the senses drag you around. That's why they say it's a drag. Say, oh, it's a real drag. It's not fun to get dragged around, right? If you're going to have a horse, would you rather ride on top of the horse and control the reins, or would you rather have him drag you around the street? Which one? You need time to think about it? Or you don't want to be dragged around the street, do you? Your skin comes off and everything, right? You get bruised and you get hurt. You see people being dragged around by the senses. But Krishna is showing us here that these are the sources of misery. Didn't we read a few verses back that these senses are the sources of misery, and so one should not engage in them? That was in the 5th chapter. We read that. We see what happens with these, that Krishna says in the 2nd chapter, while contemplating the objects of the senses, one develops attachment from them. From such attachment, lust arises. From lust, anger develops. Tell me what is getting better. Anger develops. Then from anger, delusion. And from delusion, one's intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, one falls into the material pool. Which is the good part of that? Is there a good part? No. As Krishna says in the 6th chapter, a little later on, that from whenever and wherever the mind wanders, pull it back under the control of the self. Because there's a difference of a passing thought, or if you're contemplating it, right? Isn't it? Like you walk by, you see something, but you're contemplating it, you're reading it, thinking, oh, like the menu. You're thinking, well, should I have the tally, or should I have the pizza? You're contemplating what it is, thinking about it deeply. There's a difference between when you just notice something that looks appealing and when you're contemplating it, meditating on it, letting it go into the brain. Now, we're supposed to do that with some things. With Krishna's instructions, we're supposed to contemplate them, meditate them, and put them in our brain. That's why if we're thinking of Krishna, there's no room for Maya. And if we're thinking of Maya, there's no room for Krishna. But we have to at least get a little bit of Krishna in, no matter what. But we find that this is the easy solution. But we can't afford to become confused about this fact. Because we do advertising. We have kirtan, we have a Rath Yatra, we have a temple, we blow the conch shell, a signal that we're going to start the artik. I wish people would signal when they're going to drive out into traffic, like we signal for the artik, but they just drive out, right? No idea they're coming, right? They just, or turning the corner, no idea they're turning, they just turn. But we signal before we start something, because we've contemplated it out well. We've thought about it carefully, what we're going to do. We don't just take action without knowing. Don't think about it, just do it, right? We think about it carefully. What action should I do next? What is the next appropriate thing that I should do? Now, it helps to have some kind of regulation in life. And we want to purify our desires, because if we're running around becoming pulled all over, then we're not going to make advancement. And the advancement really comes as quickly as we want to surrender. But we need to know all the facts. Maharaj Katvanga fought for the demigods. And Kartikeya says, you can have a benediction, anything you want. So he says, give to me a house by the sea and beautiful girls. And what if he'd said that? He says, well, how long do I have to live? And Kartikeya told him 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And so he went and surrendered to Krishna's lotus. Do they have to drill right now? They went and surrendered. He went and surrendered to Krishna's lotus feet right away. Now, what if he tried to enjoy in those 3 minutes? How long can you enjoy in those 3 minutes? If I tell you, look, I'll give you 100 crores of rupees, but you only get to have them for 3 minutes, and I'm going to shoot you in the head. Would you feel happy because now you're going to be a major crorepati? Would you? Because it's only temporary, right? But isn't it temporary anyway? Is 3 minutes temporary? Is 3 days temporary? Is 3 years temporary? How about 300 years? It is temporary. It goes by in a short period of time. So we have to know the value here. Keep the mind and the senses bridled so that we know the value of it. Because when we're self-centered, we don't do the proper calculation. We just think, I want what I want when I want it. Doesn't matter if it's going to be difficult to get. I have to suffer trying to get it. And when I get it, I might lose it, and it'll make me misery anyway. Which part of that is good? First, it's difficult to get, right? We suffer trying to get it. We suffer more when we get it, and then we might lose it. So which part is good? So if we don't look at the outcome before we do something, right? Then we have to know where we're going. We don't just go. We don't drive like the people drive here. They just drive out into traffic. We make sure we know where we're going, we make a signal, and we go exactly where we're going. We have it mapped out where we're going. And by doing this, we can see that when we cease from personal sense endeavors and concentrate on the Supreme, that's the sign of self-surrender. But so many people want just what they wanted. World leaders, businessmen, they don't think the things all the way through, even with plenty of evidence. Let's look at Duryodhana. Duryodhana, Krishna came to try to talk peace with him. See, he didn't do just like the other people. They just started war. First, he tried to negotiate with him, and he tried all the other options first, correct? So Krishna went to Duryodhana, and he offered him, tried to negotiate with him. They even told him to just give the Pandavas 5 villages. And Duryodhana says, well, I'm just going to capture you, Krishna. And then Krishna showed his universal form. He showed that he was God. Now they say if you can't beat them, join them, right? Now, if someone shows you that they're God, can you beat them? No, but you can suffer trying. So, if he showed that he's God, Duryodhana says, I don't care if you're God, I'm still going to fight this war. Now, does that sound very smart? If the person shows you he's God, wouldn't you think it would be better to do it his way? Or do you think if I do it his way half the time and force him to do it my way the other half, that makes me 50% surrendered? Not exactly. Plus, good luck trying to force him to do it your way. It doesn't work that way. So we have to see. It's just like we really want what we want. But you know what? Is there a prayer that we can pray to Krishna that we can get exactly what we want? Is there? Yes? What is it?
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Yes, because we're saying, Krishna, that today my wish is that whatever you want to happen, that's what I want to happen. Then we get our wish, right? When we align our will with Krishna, we get our wish, because I wish what you want to happen, and then it happens. When we try to force it our way, it may not happen that way. If it does some of the time, that's even worse, because we expect it more often. We look at Kamsa. He thought God's going to be born to kill me. We see the examples of many of these people when they had curses. They would just accept the curse. But Kamsa thought, well, I'll send the demons, after I already tried to kill him, I'll send the demons to Vrindavan to kill Krishna. Now, which of these demons was successful? None. Now, if you were Kamsa and you had sent many demons to kill Krishna, and all of them were killed by Krishna, would you think maybe I'd better try to join him or think of a new strategy? Is it? Right? Wouldn't you think that? If you weren't thinking so selfishly that I got to have what I want, I got to be in charge, I don't care if Krishna is God, I'm not going to let him have his way even if he is God. So, then Kamsa arranged, we're telling the story of how the government was changed in Mathura, right? That the leader in Mathura sent all the demons here and Krishna killed them. So then he wanted to hold on to being in charge so much that he had an elephant sent there to kill Krishna. And there was a killing, right? But it was the elephant, not Krishna. So then Kamsa thought, well, not to worry, the wrestlers will kill Krishna. Did that work out? Now you've got to figure that if all of these things are going wrong, this is the time I better either make peace with Krishna or run away. So at this point, what does he say? He says, well, fine. He's been defeated by Krishna at every instance. And now he says, well, fine. We're going to capture Nanda Maharaj and Vasudev and Devaki and Yasoda and the cowherd boys and my father and all the people who are against me, and we're just going to kill them all. Well, wouldn't you think if he'd been unsuccessful and he was getting himself in more trouble trying to kill Krishna, that this was not the time to try to threaten Krishna's closest people? Does that sound like a good choice to you? It doesn't, does it? So Krishna jumped over the dais and grabbed Kamsa and killed him, and then they put Ugrasena in charge, and that's how the government was changed in Mathura. So we don't want to press our luck. When we see that we're failing, trying to control, and that we do things that make us miserable, the obvious thing is to figure out what makes me happy, which is making Krishna happy, and do more of it. What makes me miserable, and do less of it. If it makes me miserable, why do I want to keep doing it? If we know that behind these three doors is Gaur Nitai, Krishna Balaram, Radha Shyamsundar, but we choose the other three doors with lust, anger, and greed, we must be insane, right? We must be insane to make such a choice. But that's the kind of choice that we make. That's what we read about, the divine and the demoniac natures. The demoniac person thinks that my enemy's been killed and I will kill my other enemy. And so much is mine now and I will gain so much more later. And he's thinking all this is going to work out. You know, we look at all these world leaders that took over territory. Hitler and Napoleon and Genghis Khan. And are any of them alive today? No. They took over the territory and they all had trouble. So we look at the situation that we should plan things ahead. You think of the fact that when the beginning of Bhagavad-Gita, Dhritarashtra says they're just about to fight, the two armies are there. Now before this, Dhritarashtra had the opportunity, he and Duryodhana, to just give the Pandavas 5 villages and be done with it, right? And at this point, the battle's just about to start. And Dhritarashtra is saying to Sanjaya, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do being desirous of fighting? He's trying to analyze it now while it's already in action. Shouldn't he have analyzed this while either before or while they were being offered 5 villages? If he realized that there was a good chance that the Pandavas can beat them, wouldn't he have been better off to offer them the half the kingdom or 5 villages at least? He's going to risk it all? And at the last minute he's asking now? Isn't it too late to ask now? Right? What is the troop strength of mine and theirs? Shouldn't you ask about this before you've started a war? You know, shouldn't he have analyzed the situation before that? When did Krishna analyze the situation in Hastinapur, right? Where the Kurus were? They were in Hastinapur? What was the capital city of the Kurus? Hastinapur or Indraprastha? When did Krishna decide to analyze this situation and how the Kurus were treating the Pandavas? No, when did he analyze the situation? When did he ask someone to go analyze it?
Yudhishthira?
What?
Yudhishthira.
No, Yudhishthira. He asked someone to go and check out how the Kurus were treating the Pandavas and what was the situation and was there likely to be trouble later. When was this and who did he ask? I'll give you a hint. It was the same person that picked up Krishna in Vrindavan and brought him to Mathura. Who was that? So, when did he ask Akrura? Right after Kamsa was killed. How much later was the Battle of Kurukshetra? 100 years maybe? Yes? Was it? Something like that? So was Krishna analyzing the situation way ahead? Isn't this the way we should think? Is try to make a scan of the situation and see what are our obstacles, what things we need to do, what things we need to take out. Don't just blunder into the activities and when the war's about to start asking, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do? We think, why are you doing it now? Of course, it's too late to change it, and it was Krishna's will, and we don't want the Kurus to win anyway. But just looking at it as a point, that was not good planning. He definitely should have analyzed this before. But people are so greedy, they don't want to give up part of what they have, even if they're going to lose all of it. Like I told the story of Bing Crosby, was it Bing Crosby or the one that was always so cheap? Was that Bing Crosby, I think? And cheap. He was like a miser. And the thief put the gun at his head and said, your money or your life. And he didn't say anything. He says, come on, your money or your life. And he says, it's a difficult decision. I'm thinking about it. But if they take your life, how can you keep your money? So if you don't want to give up the kingdom like Dhritarashtra didn't, and if you want it all like Duryodhana did, but you're not going to win anyway, then what's the point? So if we're not going to win in the battle of sense gratification, what's the point of trying to succeed in that? And then again, it may be a process. Anartha nivriti means that we're 60-70% detached from material things. We may not be 100% attached to Krishna and 100% detached from material sense gratification. But we have to arrange our life in such a way that even if desires are plaguing us, we're at least 60 or 70% detached from material things and not much attached to Krishna. It's like you put the two children on the seesaw. If this one weighs 25 kilos and this one weighs 50, the one that's 25 is up in the air, right? So you have to add another child with 50 on this side, and then the other one goes up. If we don't put enough weight on the spiritual side, we'll be up in the air spiritually, because the material side will have us weighted down. So we have to make sure that we may have a job, a wife, children, a political party, a business. All of this we have to be attached to less than we are to Krishna. Because if we're more attached to those things than we are to Krishna, we'll suffer. Especially if we have to lose one of those things, then we suffer in this world. So we see so many instructions about the sense gratification here. And the idea is we have to renounce it. It's just like if there's a weed. Do you cut the top of the weed off or pull it out by the root? We pull it out by the root. So we have to renounce this. We have to be thinking that I want to give up this desire to enjoy the senses, that I want to live simply for Krishna. We have to think of this consciously. And it may take a big effort. It's not like turning the switch. It's not like the Christians say, you just believe in Christ and then it's all done. We have to have a process, right? If you're hired at a job, you don't put just a badge on and say, I accept that I'm an employee without doing any work, right? You have to do some work. You have to do some activities. You know, some of the Christian people are saying, well, what you have is an idol, and what we have is a religious icon. I said, yes, but I go to the church on Monday, or on Wednesday, or on Friday. You haven't changed any dress on Jesus. He's just sitting there on the cross. You don't do anything different. Every day you come, and we're offering food to the deity, and we're changing the clothes, and yet you say, what we have is an idol? How does that work? If we're going to give you the chance of saying you have an icon, we're at least as good of you, as not better, because who does more devotion for it? Do they cook for Christ on the altar? Do they change the clothes? No? And yet they say we have an idol. An idol is like a statue you stick up, right? They put a statue in the park, right? Like the British might have put Montgomery there, or Lord Clive, something they put in the park. That's an idol, that nothing is done to treat them personally. So we have a process that we remove from sense gratification and attach to Krishna. And you won't find this philosophy in other places. And you won't find it in what, unfortunately, what some Brahmins do here is instead of teaching people how to become free from material attachment and attach to Krishna, they teach them to do a karma kanda puja to get some material benefit. But this is not going to help you go back to Godhead or help you get relieved from material attachments. If you do a puja and get a better wife, a bigger car, a newer house, is that going to get you back to Godhead? No. It just has something more material. So we shouldn't be doing a sacrifice to get something material. Sacrificing to the demigods. This is why Krishna, when they were going to do the Indra Puja, Krishna told Nanda Maharaj, why don't we just take all the ingredients and offer to Govardhan Hill? And Nanda Maharaj says, well, why don't we just finish this sacrifice and we'll do that one later? And Krishna says, no, all the ingredients are here. It'll take time. We have to do the most important thing first. He even tells them other philosophies that if you do the right things, you'll get the right result. which is somewhat true. You think about, here's three different processes. One is that you worship the demigods to get some material benefit. Another one is you do your duties and do all good things. Another one is that you serve Krishna. Now, of these three, which is the best? To serve Krishna. And of the other two, which one is probably better? Is it better to worship the demigods but not do your duty correctly, or not worship the demigods and do your duty correctly? Which one? What's that? Doing your duty correctly. That's why Krishna is saying that. It may not be the ultimate thing, but he's saying that even though there's an ultimate thing way above this, there's even things in the middle that aren't as good as worshiping me, but they're still better than just worshiping the demigod to get some material benefit. And this makes the point even stronger, is if what you're doing, if there's something better than that, and even the thing that's better, if serving Krishna is way better than that is, it makes it even more important. You're not given two choices, you're given three choices. And the choice that we make is even above the choice that's better than the demigod worship. But that's the point of it. It's better to do that than to try to trick the demigods. Better to do your duty and to realize that this is something that we do in Krishna consciousness. We live a life of somewhat renunciation. Srila Prabhupada went to America, and how many cars did he acquire? And how many women did he get involved with? None. He went there just to serve Krishna. Did he treat it any differently? When money would come in, money went to serve Krishna. Right? When someone came in a Rolls Royce to pick him up, he said, "Why have you wasted so much money?" He says, "Oh, one of the devotees' bosses has a Rolls Royce and he borrowed it." Prabhupada says, "Oh, that is okay." But he didn't want to see things being used for him. He wanted to see things being used in Krishna's service. We see the room he has. It's just a simple room, right? A simple room. And he used these to serve Krishna. So we have to see the point of this, that we don't just put sense gratification aside, that we have to renounce this desire for sense gratification. And then we actually become Krishna conscious and happy, joyous, and free. And what could be better than those things? Any questions or comments about this? Did Prabhupada bless me because I got the help I needed? Yes.
I was wondering about the suffering soul in the chariot.
Yes.
It is because the soul is such an anatomy, but does it ever suffer, or confused about this?
Well, the obvious point there is that the soul is the next door to the intelligence. And if the soul is letting the material affect the senses, and the senses drags the mind, and mind drags the intelligence, then we do feel suffering. And if we direct the mind to control the senses, then we feel happy. Haven't you experienced this? You haven't done any research on this? Have you? You've done research on this? On what happens when you control the senses and what happens when you don't?
Yeah.
Yes, you have. Of course you have. And what's the obvious conclusion?
That suffering if I'm...
Yeah, so isn't that the point? That's like saying, well, I stick your hand in fire, but you're not the body, so you're not really suffering, so don't take it out of the fire, right? One brings suffering, and one brings relief from suffering. We don't have to be confused in the details of if it's only affecting the intelligence or if it's affecting the soul, right? Because it's contaminated by it. Just like water is always pure, but you put dirt in it, it tastes like dirt. So you have to take the dirt out. So rather than trying, like Prabhupada says, when they're talking about how we got in the material world in this and blaming other people, if the house is on fire, we figure out how to get out, not whether it's your fault or my fault or how did it start. You'll get yourself out first. That's the important point. Yes.
Right.
I was-
You were giving the example of Kamsa. He saw that so many demons were killed by Krishna and
Yes.
Dastas were also killed. And he wanted still to arrest Nanda Maharaj
Yes.
and Vasudeva, everybody. But he never came to his senses that, okay, I have done this one, I have lost so much.
Yeah.
I should surrender. So this thing he never came in his mind. So here the Lord is saying that intelligence is given by me.
Yes.
Everything is given by Lord. So why did not God gave him this intelligence?
Well, because you have to ask for it. We ask for it. Krishna doesn't force us. We have two things. If we want to do what we want, Krishna sanctions and lets us do whatever we want. And if we turn towards him, he guides us. But he's not going to force us. And back to the philosophy of all these people, Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra, Kamsa, and many others, is I want what I want when I want it, regardless of how much suffering it is, and even if it doesn't appear to be easy to get, because I want it, I'm going to try for it anyway. But if it's not good and it's going to be difficult to get, why are we trying for it? Either way is bad. It's difficult to get, and even when I get it, right? Like a tiger goes down the street. So you try to chase the tiger and you're going to grab it, right? It's going to be difficult to grab it, and if you catch it, you're going to be really sorry you did. So we're not thinking properly. We're thinking that we're the controller. Because it was Krishna, he can adjust the circumstances to the way he wants it to, right? Like if Krishna is going in a car to Delhi, he can change the lights all to green, right? But can you? No. So that's the whole idea, is we either want what we want when we want it, or we want what Krishna wants. Now.
Just like when Kalia, he was fighting with Kalia. So Kalia was very much angry and was fighting with Krishna.
Yes.
But then how he came to senses, how
Yes.
Krishna
Krishna's
came to
feet
senses.
touched him. Krishna's feet touched his head.
That's why he got some mercy and he surrendered.
We should be thinking how we can get mercy. How we can get mercy.
But similar way,
Yeah, Krishna's feet touched his head. And we come in contact with Krishna, we get some mercy.
a similar way when Krishna was in front of Kamsa fighting with wrestlers, he was in front of Krishna, but Kamsa could not get that benefit what Kanya got.
Well, Krishna didn't dance on his head. So we have to ask Krishna to dance on our head.
So also Duryodhana also he did not get this mercy, although he saw universal form, but he was not willing to surrender to it.
No.
So how this bewilderedness is coming to the person those were exalted souls and we are conditioned souls. So how
Well, because they want, like,
souls we can
there was a play called The Divine Comedy written by, I forget, maybe it was Dante's Inferno, but in that the devil says, I'd rather rule in hell than serve in heaven. So we're so attached to trying to be a controller and the supreme enjoyer that we don't want to serve Krishna. We don't want to know about the circumstances. We just want the chance to control and enjoy. Even if it doesn't look like it's possible, we still want that chance, and we're willing to give everything to get it. It's insanity, just like we expressed in the beginning. We think we either can't enjoy it or it's going to make us suffer, but we want it so bad because we want to be the controller and the enjoyer. So we have to give up that mentality. We have to figure out what we have to do, how we have to not be so attached to being that.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Any others, or is that good? Hare Krishna. All glories to the Prabhupada.